Hey everyone, JVD here from the Villains of Man, bringing you another comic book review over Kong of Skull Island 2018 special number 1 from Boom Studios. I was pretty excited to read this, especially based on the last one shot Boom Studios did with the Kong franchise, which is Kong Gods of Skull Island, which I recently reviewed. This one by the cover, it's kind of misleading to the story, even though there is a Viking woman depicted with Kong in the snow. There is no snow, which makes sense. It's Skull Island. You're either going to have dry heat or wet heat, depending on, I guess, the seasons. But I didn't care for the story. I really like Vikings. I really like the show Vikings on History. So I guess there's a plug. If you never watch it, you should watch it. But this story really kind of jacks up the timeline, I guess, for me, for the whole Kong of Skull Island thing Boom has going on. There's not really a lot to the story, even though you get some really interesting uh, dinosaur slash monster concepts for the island, which is kind of what this book is known for. Unlike the original King Kong, where you're getting, dinosaurs a lot, which is what the character is. I should say the monster is known for. But in these books, you're getting these really cool hybrid-looking creatures. So that's a plus if you enjoy that type of thing, which I enjoyed some of the designs that were in here. Um, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Some Vikings come to Skull Island, which they call Anlit Land. It's very weird. That is spelled Andlitland. It's a if you know anything about Norse language, and just kind of the way some words are spelled, they're kind of off from what the English language is. But they've made one. The story takes place with their first expedition, which goes horribly wrong and sends them packing. And within 3 years, they come back and they try to settle Skull Island. They make peace with the natives and trade. Basically, much like the one shot before this, Kong Gods of Skull Island. They're all about conquering the island, settling it, and taking its riches and its resources. So, with both these one shots for the series, you're really starting to see there's a theme there, and it's would-be conquerors coming to Skull Island. But it's a really quick read. It does nothing that adds to the mythos of Kong in this series, much like the one shot beforehand or the 12-part series, which I have done reviews for both those if you want to check them out. But it's kind of, I shouldn't say that because there's one part that is oddly strange that you kind of don't see in the movies or even in this book, which is plays out a little bit sooner than I guess what you would expect. But I'll get to that here in a later as I'll start some spoilers. But the book is centered around a woman named Gudrun, and her husband led the first expeditions, which they were um, attacked by these Triceratops chameleon iguana looking things not too long after they got on Skull Island. They look really cool. Um, you haven't seen hardly anything like that yet out of any of these stories, but basically the husband dies, she becomes a leader, and then while everything is looking bad for these Vikings, which it's cool because they don't fear these creatures at all. They're actually trying to lead a warrior, be like warriors. And Kong basically shows up and scares them off, and that's when they realize they need to leave. Well, 3 years later, Gunrun, she comes back, and there's this man named Dagir that is with her, which I guess you could pronounce Dagger if you wanted to. But the story is kind of set through his eyes because it's almost like he's writing a journal, which you see plays out at the end to her. But this time they've trained for monsters. They wind up fighting this ankylosaurus armadillo looking thing. And Kong shows up, which she would have expected. And she forms a bond with Kong. And basically, we're used to Kong taking women, which we basically kind of seen at the end of Gods of Skull Island. They don't. There's a bond. Like, he's always around, and he's always knows where she's at. It's not like him taking her to his domain, to the mountain. There's no idea that there's a love between him and the woman here. It's that there is a bond, almost like to Vikings to a degree. You know, they enter battle, and he's always there to help and basically there to save them. But as I said, they make that uh, Tagatu tribe, who had united in the Congo Skull Island maxi series. They're there. They make trade, but the storyteller warns her, that you cannot bend the island to your will. The island will destroy you, which doesn't really play out. It kind of makes it's her that does this, Gudrun, and not the island. But basically, come to the end of the story, there's a mutiny. And all the men are wanting to leave. They've been here for 3 years. No, it's longer. That's been quite a while. And she doesn't want to leave, so they're setting her up. And they're going to basically leave the island. They knew the Kong would come. And they set up a trap. They even shoot an arrow into his eyes. It's pretty wild. And they wind up taking him down. But when she escapes, and when they leave, two of the guys at the ship she has killed. And she uses the bodies as bait, which draw some of these monsters that they've been fighting, these dinosaur things, to the ships to kill the men while she stays on the island. Basically, she grows old with Kong, and the tribe takes her in, and as she dies of old age, they give Kong to her, who we see Kong as old. Now, this is what's weird about the whole thing, and kind of throws in what Boom Studios has created really off, is that, the Dagir, they're talking about if they kill Kong, there'll be enough fur to, basically set up their clan for winters to come. It's like 20 years. And but they just wind up taking his arm. It's one of his forearms. And Kong obviously lives through this. He doesn't bleed out or whatnot. Because when you see him when he's old, he's all scarred and battle damage. And he's just got a stump there on his arm, which totally throws anything off that's been built here at this moment. Because at the end of Kong of Skull Island, the maxi series, we see what I believed was Kong, the baby, and Vala, who's became basically his adopted mother from Ghost, going to the island, and then you see kind of more of that play out in Gods of Skull Island. But here, this is almost like it's a completely different Kong. Because, obviously, based on timeline, the Vikings started, I guess, around 1000 AD, kind of around that timeline. And if you even if you watch Vikings on history, which I mentioned with Ragnar Lothbrok, that's kind of like 9th century. If you look into the history of the character, of the person. So, Vikings here, I know you could probably say that's probably all the way up until the 17th century, but even then, none of that makes any sense because this Kong is missing an arm. And the Kong's Gods of Skull Island book takes place in the early 1900s because they actually have an airplane. So I don't know if this is maybe kind of like a what if or an Elseworlds like you would see from Marvel or DC, because there's people on the island. You learn from the Congo Skull Island maxi series that they have traveled to this island before because that's how Ghost got there. And from Gods of Skull Island, you learn that there was people below Skull Island that worshipped like this great fireworm thing. But when the Vikings and Gudrun meet the tribe, they look like the Tagatu tribe because they have a storyteller, and the storyteller came from those tribes before they got stranded on Skull Island when their volcanoes erupted on their own islands. So this kind of throws everything out of whack. Especially just not even the timeline itself with placing Vikings in there, but just the Kong with one arm. So I'm very curious to see if they're going to follow up with any of this, if any of this will make any sense, or is this just a story that's just out there? Because obviously it doesn't add up with the rest of the books, and that's what really kind of thrown me off. Another thing is, like I mentioned with Kong and Gudrun, there wasn't this love interest there. It was more of a bond, like a warrior's bond. And what was strange is Kong would come to her aid, but he would never take her away. And the thing is, she was almost the one that was in love with him, and he not loving her. And it's really weird because she didn't want to leave the island because of Kong. And most of the time in the movies is you see that afterwards. Is she doesn't want to leave Kong behind. There's not, and Kong just really kind of in a sense doesn't care so much about it like he would in a movie. Like he wants to take her around. So I thought that was kind of neat and odd at the same time. But once you get to the end of this book and you realize it doesn't fit what Boom Studios has already built, it kind of really takes away from everything. But who knows? Maybe later on they'll explain all this, and you'll find out that there is a different Kong with one arm missing. But at the end of this book, looks like he's about to die of old age. But I'm JVD. This has been my review for Kong of Skull Island 2018 Special Number 1 from Boom Studios. Keep reading, guys.